Hello and welcome to the Free Cheese episode 587. I'm your Joe Dix, joined by Matt Sellner.
Hello.
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. This week, we celebrate 30 years of PlayStation. We'll look back through the brand's history, its initial entry onto the market in 1994, how it has evolved over 3 decades, and share our personal memories along with yours, listeners. Finally, we'll close out with our hopes for the future of PlayStation at the end of this episode. But first, Matt, what is your favorite PlayStation face button? Matt is checking a controller for those.
I wasn't checking. I checked everywhere but the place it was. Circle.
Wow, bold choice. Why circle?
Because I actually like it as the OK button. Sue me.
I miss it as the, well, I guess it was never really the OK button on American consoles, but
not if you play Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, more people should. I wish it had gone the other way. When PS5 made that change to make X the global confirmation, I wish they'd stuck with the original intention of the brand and made everybody else convert. But I think mine's triangle, dude. I think I like the green of it a lot. I like that it was always intended, I like the way it's been used. I shall say it's not as utilized on the 4 and 5, but on PS3 and PSP, there's all sorts of weird hidden stuff you can access in menus and systems with the triangle button. So I'm going triangle. We're going to do a little history lesson here. We'll keep it brief because these stories are known and we are not here to just regurgitate a Wikipedia page. But for completionism, let's go back to 1988. Sony and Nintendo enter a joint venture to help bring a floppy disk system like the Famicom disk system to the Super Famicom. Sony had the contract with Nintendo to bring its sound processor to the Super Famicom, and we did end up getting that. That came to fruition. The Sony sound chip is in the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo. This extension to the contract would have been to take advantage of Sony's expertise in developing a CD-ROM add-on, which made sense for the time, made sense for the company and the collaboration. At the time, this was done by Ken Kutaragi. He spearheaded this collaboration. And the CD-ROM add-on that was being worked on was tentatively known as the PlayStation or the SNES CD. The integration of the sound processor was just the start. Both companies were expected to announce this add-on at CES in 1991 until Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi took a closer look at the licensing deal and realized how much control Sony would gain on all CD-ROM format games. So, instead of renegotiating or trying to argue the terms, he then secretly got people to reach out and contact Philips, which they spun up a contract to do the work instead. Apparently, folks at Sony found out a few days ahead of CES 91, but they proceeded with announcing the PlayStation on the first day of CES in 91, only for the morning after Nintendo to come out and announce its partnership with Philips. It was a huge betrayal in so many ways, but Kutaragi and then Sony president Norio Oga decided to proceed with the development of their own console, the PlayStation. We hear a lot about Sony's entry into the market and how everybody on the outside and inside thought it was a bad idea. We've read stories about games and what it took to convince third-party developers to bring their games to the PlayStation. One thing that's rarely discussed as we talk about the history of PlayStation, and one that I want to start our podcast with, the buttons. That's why I kicked us off with the buttons. Do you know why the button symbols were chosen?
Oh, you're going to say it. I've heard it, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Do you know what any of them represent? Well, you know circles confirm.
X is back. I don't know a triangle. No. Spoil it.
So I have a quote here from Sony designer Teiyu Goto, who says, "We wanted something simple to remember, which is why we went with icons or symbols. I gave each symbol a meaning and a color. The triangle refers to viewpoint. I had it represent one's head or direction and made it green. Square refers to a piece of paper. I had it represent menus or documents and made it pink. The circle and X represent yes or no decision making, and I made them red and blue respectively. People thought these colors were mixed up, and I had to reinforce to management that that's what I wanted." Which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I believe that some of the early software development kits given out for the PlayStation included similar references to this, and it was encouraged for developers, if they were going to make any sort of like camera or something like that, a button, that would be triangle, that menus would be opened with square, circles would be confirm, and X would be cancel or go back. And you see that if you kind of go back to some of the early PlayStation games, and then people just sort of did what they wanted to do. PlayStation first launched in Japan on December 3rd, 1994, which is, fun fact for the listeners out there, although you're hearing this on the 9th, we're recording it on the actual 30th anniversary of the PlayStation. In North America, it released September 9th, 1995. Matt, can you name a single launch title?
No.
Neither could I. Would have guessed so many different ones, and I had none of them correct. The launch lineup is not actually that interesting. The interesting things would come much later in the PlayStation's life cycle. What do you think at the time made PlayStation different from its contemporaries?
I would think it would have to be the graphics, 3D, right? Because it beats. Remind me of my history here. I think it beats N64 to market, right? Or is it the same year?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. No, it's 2 years before N64.
Oh.
Technically, right? I mean, launching in Japan in 94, the Ultra 64 was still code name. It came out in North America a month after the Virtual Boy, so that should give you some context. The Sega side of the fence, they did have the Sega Saturn, but it was they kind of doubled down on 2D. It could do 3D, but it was a lot more complicated to do so, and they went in that direction with it. There were initial talks after the Nintendo shakeup. Kutaragi and co. did go to Sega and say, "Hey, we were going to do this thing with them, but they just screwed us. Do you want to team up?" And they said, "No, thank you. We have got our own thing happening." Yeah, I agree. I think another big thing for me was the CD format. Just obviously we know now that you're able to cram a lot more than a cartridge. You're able to put full audio onto a CD that you couldn't do in a cartridge. But it also just, I don't know, I remember like starting to collect them, and it was the first console, I mean, granted, my age had a lot to do with it, but it's the first console that I feel like I wanted to keep everything, right? I feel like the cartridge era, although I wish today I'd kept A, the cartridges, but also B, all of the boxes and everything. I really didn't. It was like, oh, well, you throw the box away. I don't need any of this stuff. But the CDs, I don't know. I think because of the nature of it, that I was also collecting music CDs, that I wanted to like look through the liner notes of a CD the same way I wanted to look through like a manual for a game and all that stuff. What do you remember about the early days of PlayStation?
Ooh, not a lot, because I'm late to the party. But I remember the first time seeing one was over my aunt's house, and then boyfriend, now husband of my godmother,
Oh, wow.
brought over a PlayStation and scared me half to death by launching Resident Evil 2.
We had a similar story written in. Why don't I kick to that real quick? Our good friend Akko wrote in. I remember my sister's boyfriend at the time kept talking about Resident Evil leading up to its release. He kept saying how it's supposed to be the best looking and scariest game ever made. So I had like huge mythos of the game built up in my head. When the game finally came out, he brought the PlayStation over and started playing, and I remember being scared watching him play. Everything from the first zombie encounter to the hallway dogs. To this day, when I think of the 90s, the first RE is what I think of. I actually didn't get a PlayStation until pretty late in its life, and the game that tipped me over the edge was RPG Maker. This was the first time when I was learning how much this was the time when I was learning how much I love JRPGs, and I thought the idea of making a mature RPG where the NPC's curse would be so dope. I remember going to the mall to pick up the PlayStation and RPG Maker, and when I got home, I had no idea what was going on and quickly gave up. Thank you, Akko, for writing in. You too can share your PlayStation memories. Podcast at thefreecheese.com. I don't remember a ton. I don't remember playing Resident Evil back then. I don't think I got exposed to that one until much later. But you did start to see that sort of shift towards... Obviously, we were, I think, a little bit younger than the target audience. I mean, it definitely worked, but I think the idea was... They were really just building the block right on the back of the Genesis, right? Because the Genesis was like, hey, you're grown up now. Why don't you play this thing? And the PlayStation was like, well, you're even more grown up now. So why don't you play this thing? And you see a lot of like teenage marketing happening here and a lot of like push in that direction. I remember getting one made me feel older and cooler. Like I remember listening to, and I listened to them just before recording, just to put myself back there. I remember listening to the Spice Girls and thinking, if I have a PlayStation, the Spice Girls will want to date me. That is,
there it is.
Yeah. The lyrics to When Two Become One. I felt it knowing that I could get there if I had a PlayStation. But to me, it also just felt like the future was finally there. I know we talk a lot and we make the joke about like, oh, we just thought these graphics would never get better and everything was so lifelike. And it's like, it really did, not that per se, but it did just feel new and exciting. And like games just being in 3D, to your point to begin with, like how it was different from its contemporaries, it just was a huge shift in what we were seeing and able to do on screen. A lot more interactive. The controller too. I feel like the controller was another piece for me that just felt like it was like a decade's leap forward, right? Like,
did you have the original, or did you always have a DualShock from day one?
No, I in fact never owned a DualShock until the PS2.
Oh.
So, yeah, I only had the original, and then I got PS2, because I remember getting the demo. I think we talked about this in the Ape Escape episode earlier this year, but I got the demo disc for Ape Escape and couldn't play it because I didn't have a DualShock.
Oh, right, yes, you did say that.
So I sat on that until I got a PS2, and then I had the controller there. So you had one from the start, right?
Yeah, I had one from the rip. I think I get the PlayStation. I get my PlayStation, or it's bought for me at that weird time where it's still the original, like just gray model. It's not the PS1. I say that in air quotes here. But it comes with a DualShock at this point.
That makes sense. Yeah, okay. Do you remember your first game?
I'm trying real hard. I think I would not be surprised. I think said Godmother's husband gave me just a bunch of like older games he wasn't going to play anymore just for me to sample, and I would not have been shocked if I just like put on like a triple play baseball.
Oh yeah.
Or a Tomb Raider.
Oh yeah. See, Tomb Raider was another one for me that I really have been wanting to go back to them recently. I've been drawn to them again. I don't know why, but I never played the original all the way through. I only played the demo disc again. And that, from what I remember, you only had access to Lara's mansion. So it was just a lot of like practicing the acrobatics, doing the swimming in the pool, and locking the butler in the freezer. And that was kind of the extent of it.
You win. Demo complete. No, yeah, because it's weird because I think I play PlayStation a bunch. One with again, Godmother's husband. I think my cousins beat me to having a PlayStation. I think, and I believe my one friend Mike also gets a PlayStation before me. I definitely know he has a 2 before me because I played Grand Theft Auto 3 over his house before I had the capability to over mine. Yeah, I
Do you
can't
still
remember.
have yours?
No, but I know exactly where it's at.
Oh, all right. PlayStation for me, it's the interesting thing where I not only...
Oh, sorry, PlayStation. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you follow
yeah.
it right after PlayStation. PlayStation 1, I do not have anymore. It's the only PlayStation I do not have.
This is the only console line where I've bought every single iteration. Like Nintendo, I would skip some generations. Sega, I skipped. PlayStation, I've owned every single generation, and I still have all of them. And for we're not video yet, but for Matt, I can hold it up. For listener, I can open the thing, and you can hear the disc. I know, right? I still keep it under, with all the rest of the consoles, but if I play anything, I tend to do PS1 through my PS2 or PS3. But early game, like earliest, besides Crash, because Crash, I have a very specific memory of playing Crash and Crash 2. I remember getting Crash 2 for Christmas and then not being able to finish it, or not, like, all I wanted to do was just play it. And I remember being dragged out of the house to go to a Christmas party or something. But Twisted Metal was the one, like, I remember getting and just spending so much time with. I got a stack of stuff. We'll go through some different games here shortly. Looking back at the early days of PlayStation, do you remember or do you know the first marketing slogans for PlayStation?
No, because I would have been too young, and I think I heard it through more word of mouth and just experience.
There were 2 that were pretty early. There's the commercial where they say, "Do not underestimate the power of PlayStation." I think we've heard that one. But the early one was, "You are not E." But the E was red. So, "You are not red E." That was your first one. The second one was Enos, ENOS, which was, and it was another red E. And this was Ready 9th of September, because that was the U.S. launch date, 9th of September. Which, weird. That's the other part of the launch of the PlayStation that I always think back to. Is just like how bizarre and weird things were in marketing back in the 90s. They were kind of nuts too. Like they got actual, I don't know, like I think David Lynch did a PlayStation ad. Like there's some crazy campaigns out there that they were like really going for it with, bringing people in. What do you remember liking about PlayStation then?
I like the controller a lot, the DualShock, the actual vibrations. I think that was always cool.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know. I just remember the graphics. Graphics, so cool.
It made a huge difference, man. Real quick, we'll do one more listener story before we start jumping into the generations themselves. Ben wrote in and said, "I was also late to owning a PlayStation. I played it at my Greek friend Dimitri's house. all the time earlier on, but eventually had enough allowance money to buy a PS1, and this is the ONE one. I also bought Clay Fighter for Genesis from the bargain bin the same day. I had the mini TV screen, but it was definitely some third-party BS. It still rocked, though. The best part about getting into PlayStation later on in its lifetime was buying all the great games really cheap. Some of my first games include Silent Hill and all the Resident Evils. This is like such a lost relic to playing games back then. I know you can do this today, but there's just not like a physical... like when PS4s are now cheap enough to... like, how much is the PS4 now? $100? $150? I don't know what they're selling them for. But like whatever they are, you also can't just like wander into Target or Best Buy and just get a bunch of PS4 games for cheap. Like I feel like they're still going to be $20 or more. Like probably have a better time buying them digitally, if anything. And it's just not the same thing as like wandering in, buying a PS1 at the end of its life cycle and just getting a bunch of greatest hits for like $10.
So the other thing is, though, like all those discs, they're like main publishers type stuff. Nowadays, if you're an indie, you're just coming straight to console, going digital. That's where you kind of lose it at. That's why can't like F1 23 still like $20 because big publisher money.
Yeah, it's just not the same. Thank you, Ben, for writing in with that. Matt, I want to step through, we've been a little PS1 heavy and we'll stay there for a little bit longer, but I do want to step through the generations and just talk briefly about the major innovations or elements of each console that stand out to us then and now. We'll talk about some key titles per generation, and I have a surprise game for Matt that I'll reveal when we get there.
Well, we were done ranking, dude.
Oh, I wish. I wish. So let's start at the beginning. PlayStation 1. What would you say was the major innovation to the PlayStation 1?
I would say the controller. And again, just, I don't know, the things I liked, I think, are the innovations, the graphics. Yeah, just the big jump there.
The other one I always is kind of underscored and not talked about because I think now we look back at them as a hindrance, but the memory card was like this magical little portal into your entire life's history.
The magical little piece of shit that prevented you from saving. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, that was a nightmare too, because like in hindsight, just buy another memory card. Right? Like today, if I filled up a memory card, like I do it with hard drives. If I fill up a hard drive, I clear out what I don't need, but I just go buy a new hard drive. Granted, we were kids. The concept of it, they were this like impossible commodity, but
I convinced my parents to get one of the thick boys with the buttons, A through C, 1 through 8.
Oh,
Each combo was a fucking new memory card, man. Had Maddens and EA Sports titles and the C's. Had action, and to separate it out. Now, it was a pain in the ass to try and find where that shit was saved months later. But damn it, it was fun.
It's still that, like, I have the MemCard Pro for PS2 and I have the GameCube one. And it's the same thing. Like, it's a nightmare to actually navigate that stuff, even though I have unlimited memory cards. But yeah. Yeah, we talked a bit about innovation of PS1, but I think we hit a lot of that. Before we get into our favorite titles for PS1, this is the game. I want to see if you can guess. If you can guess the top-selling PlayStation 1 game, more power to you. But I'll give you a point if you guess any of the top 5.
Top 5. I'm going to say Gran Turismo 2.
Wow. Nice. It's number 3.
Okay.
Top 5 were Gran Turismo.
Damn, I was going to say the first. Damn it. Okay.
Final Fantasy 7.
Oh, okay. I didn't think it was going to crack the top 5. Okay.
I didn't either. Gran Turismo 2, Final Fantasy 8, and Tekken 3.
Oh, I own two of those. Two of those top 5.
What were your favorite?
Oh no,
titles?
3. Never mind. I had 3 because I had Gran Turismo at one point. I mean, it's weird because today I have a different sense of favorite games as opposed to back then. I did play a bunch of Final Fantasy VII back then, trying to leave Midgar, and when I left Midgar, doing the grind or whatever, just not knowing the systems as intimately as I do now. But I tried. Again, bigger sports guy. I was a big fan of the 989 stuff at the time. Like NHL, I think it was Face Off, and it felt Game Day. Mm-hmm. I kind of liked what they were putting out at the time. Oh God, what else? What else? At the time, I didn't know I hated the Tomb Raider games as much as I did.
Yeah. We were more patient, or I don't know what the word was.
But yeah, I'm sure there's other things I'm forgetting, but I mean, Gran Turismo, I enjoyed playing it, doing the licensing stuff, but I was never good at it because I didn't understand the concept of a brake.
Oh yeah, I still don't. I use the.
I've gotten better.
Of the car.
I've gotten better. But yeah, no, as a kid, got to make this banking right. Nah, I was in the gravel trap every time.
Yep.
What do you mean?
I'll see if I can jog your memory with a few of mine. Grand Theft Auto 2.
I wasn't there until 3.
I wasn't here until right at the end, right before 3 came out. Like, I think we already had a PS2 or we were about to have one. And we were in Blockbuster and we saw this and we were like, what is this? And this guy walking by was like, that game's great. And unlike the King of the Hill episode where the guy says that a CD's great and Hank tells Bobby to put it back, my mom said, all right, you can get it. Yeah, GTA 2, tons of fun. Now, inside this here disc, I have a second fun one because I never had the case for it, so I just kept it in here. But that's Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I still have my disc for that.
It's like Metal Gear Solid. It's one of those games that I'll play until much later, so I'm not trying not to count it now.
Of course, Twisted Metal 2 was there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of brother time spent with that one.
Oh, okay.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I mean, I can't think of a better game ever. This is still This and Symphony of the Night are constantly battling for the number 1 spot in my heart. This next one is the one that I keep. It is on my short list almost every year, and I always cut it. And now, in hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have cut it for next year. But it's Colony Wars. I've never been able to finish it, and I feel like the only way I'm going to finish it is if we put it on the list. So, I don't know. This came out in 97, so maybe in 3 more years we'll put it on the list for the 30th anniversary. But Colony Wars rules. Like, in concept, at least. I love how cool it looks.
I was trying to jog my memory with some stuff. Shout out to the SmackDown games.
Oh.
1 and 2. That got a lot of traction back then.
I remember owning Warzone. I still might have Warzone. I just didn't pull it.
That game is awful.
Warzone. Oh, yeah, no, not good. But it had Stone Cold on the cover, so how could you not? That's all you needed.
Yeah, no, that game is just absolutely terrible. However, the SmackDown games were the start of a thing. It was No Mercy. The N64 always had the crown jewel, but SmackDown was fun enough.
I also had the Game Shark for the PS1 that plugged into the little I/O port on the back. And I remember this feeling like... This truly felt like I was Batman. Like, I could do anything I wanted to video games. It was the most baffling, crazy thing. PS1, well, we'll save that. We'll wait. Let's hit PS2. What would you say the major innovation of the PlayStation 2 was?
Yo, the graphics are so good. They're never going to get better again, dude.
They really were. This one, there's a lot that I think people would look at, but I think it's got to be DVD, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was just
Yeah.
that was a huge selling point for everybody, right? Like, it's what
DVD
kept
player.
that thing sold out forever. It was underutilized, but the pressure-sensitive face buttons are a pretty neat thing.
It sucks when you emulate games and you come across that.
Yeah, today, doesn't help with that. All right, let's see if you can guess any of the top 5 for PS2.
Well, I gotta go to yours truly, Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec.
Bingo, number 2.
It's Metal Gear
I'll
Solid
give you a
3?
hint. Every title on the top 5 list for PS2 starts with GRAN.
Oh, shit. There's that many Gran Turismo games?
No, there's not, but there are 3 Grand Theft Auto games.
Oh, right. Duh. Yeah, duh.
So
I'm an idiot.
top
I
sellers:
literally just said
GTA San Andreas, Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, GTA Vice City, Gran Turismo 4, and GTA 3. So stupid. How about favorite titles for PS2 for you?
This is where I do play Metal Gear Solid 2 on a PlayStation 2 at some point in my life in this time frame. I was just thinking, low key, because you always hear me bitch about the good old days of EA Sports. The good old days of EA Sports.
Yeah.
They're here.
Yeah,
Madden
I was playing
04,
all
05, even up through like the end of it. I hated the quarterback vision that they introduced in, I think it was 6 or 8. I think it was 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, that's the golden age of Madden right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was buying all that stuff then. We had NHL and Madden games. I think I still have 2002 for both of those. Maybe 2004 on one of those. This was definitely the rental era. So,
Yes.
Physical games, I feel like I didn't own a ton outside of like the GTAs. Like I helped with the top seller list for sure. Owning all of those. I remember it's funny, like you pointed out with PS1, like today I have a much weirder appreciation for the PS2 than I did then. Back then, this thing comes out when I'm like 10 and it's with me through like the end of high school. And it just, that era was just a lost era for gaming, I think, for me. It was like I had so many other things going on, but yeah, I stuck out there. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 though, still I think my favorite. I remember going to the pre-launch event for that at the skate park and just, man, what a game. And now every time
Underground's here.
Yeah, Underground ruled too. Yeah, no, PS2, it's still, I don't know, man. I love that console. I still have it hooked up. I play it quite a bit. Season 13, we've got a couple of PS2 games. I'll just say that. But yeah. Before we jump
starts here too. Just shout out Guitar Hero,
true.
that madness.
Yeah, I do. When I think back to PS2, I think of Guitar Hero for sure. I remember buying Guitar Hero 2 and just playing it, nonstop. There's still part of me that kind of wants to go buy a guitar again if I find one at a flea market.
Nope, I'm done.
Just to go back and just play through 2.
I'm done.
I might do it.
I live my lifestyle.
I might do it. We'll see. We got one more listener story I want to read. This is a little bit longer, but let's read this one before we jump into the next generation of PlayStation. This is from Sandeep, who says, I'd never owned a video game console before, unless you count the Philips CDI, and frankly, who does? But I used to go over to friends and cousins' houses and play Super Nintendo and Genesis and dreamt of doing that from the comfort of my own home. But my parents refused to buy me a console, and all my attempts at theft had been unsuccessful thus far. The PlayStation had just come out and the hype was real. I used to play with the demo consoles in Target and Toys R Us, transfixed. I spent ages playing Bloody Roar in Best Buy. Whenever we went shopping over the weekend, I used to ask to go to any store that I knew had a demo console just so I could play it. I had never ever wanted anything as badly as I wanted a PlayStation. But to no avail, my parents weren't going to buy me one. I had a friend who seemed to have every console, and so, of course, he had a PlayStation. Whenever I stayed over at his place, we'd get absorbed in Tekken, or Tomb Raider, or whatever new game he just got. We talked about Final Fantasy VII, which sparked my biggest and most enduring video game obsession. His dad was playing Metal Gear Solid, and I remember heading down to the basement to watch and having my mind blown. I had to get this console, but I was 10. I didn't have any money of my own, so I just took to asking my parents repeatedly. One day, we were at my uncle and aunt's place for dinner, and I popped the question again. Dad, can I have a PlayStation? He responded with a blanket and instantaneous nope. But that year, we had my uncle and aunt over for Christmas, and my gift from them was, you guessed it, pajamas. No, that was a lie for comedic effect. It was a PlayStation. I think I had just watched a teen drama on TV where something exciting happened and one of the melodramatic characters said, I think I'm going to throw up. Obviously, that's how normal people behaved when confronted with excitement. So, who was I to challenge the norm? I pulled the console out of the gift wrap and immediately went, I think I'm going to throw up. And was greeted with a lukewarm bemusement. I was a very normal child. I could go on and tell you all how I squeezed every ounce of fun out of the demo disc that came with the console, or how many times I failed at the boulder level in Crash Bandicoot, relishing in the chance to try again, or how I got absorbed in Spyro, Metal Gear, Tekken, Resident Evil, how my addiction to Final Fantasy took hold. I could lead you through all the core memories and the joy that PlayStation brought me, but that's a story for another day. Today we celebrate. Thank you, Sandeep. Yeah, that... Did you have a thing that you constantly asked for and just wouldn't get?
Oh, it would be PlayStation. I would typically get it around the time because I also knew I was smart enough not to ask for that stuff like year one. I always like kind of keep an eye for like a next generation model or on the verge of it when they're probably selling through the old first gen model stuff, and that's what I've asked for a couple years down the road. So I had Fat Boy, but again, I think Fat Boy was there like one more year, and then it got Slim.
Oh, yeah. Fat Boy Slim. You think that's why they named it Fat Boy Slim?
No.
Oh, all right. Yeah, and I think, too, the idea of like going and asking to be at a place to play a demo console is exciting. Like, I remember poking at those things for a while, staring at all the games, all the potential. I still now, like, whenever I see people post pictures of Toys R Us or Best Buy, like, there was, and of course, like, I didn't seek this out, but I guess my accounts know me well enough that randomly I got presented on YouTube the other day it's just like, hey, here's a guy walking around with a handy cam in like a Sears in 1995. Have a good time. It's just like, yep, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to drink coffee and watch this intently. All right, next generation of PlayStation. The portable one. What would you say was the major innovation of the PSP?
Look at these graphics on the go. Obviously the UMD and the fact that you can watch your movies on the go.
That was kind of cool, dude. I mean, I know it gets mocked now, but
Oh, was your favorite copy of Rush Hour 2?
Yeah, pop it in, man. No, I think you're right, though. Like the portability of them graphics. Like, the fact that it really was as close as it was to a PS2 in your hand. I remember my brother's friend came over, and he had one, and I was like, oh, well, his parents are rich. Like, I don't know how you could have one of those things. But, like, that thing felt so cool. And I'm stoked that I eventually got one. But I did not have one at long. Like, I didn't get to go through that whole cycle. But I remember just, like, going and looking at at those in Best Buy and the rows of UMDs and all the movies and everything. What's your guess at the top selling title for PSP?
Was that, or is that later? Liberty City Stories?
Liberty City Stories is the number one selling PlayStation Portable game, Matt. Congratulations, you got 50 points. Number 2 was Monster Hunter Portable third, followed by Gran Turismo, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, and Ratchet and Clank Size Matters. What's your favorite PSP title?
It's so far, I think it's going to be, because I've really just played the PSP recently, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
I think it's Persona 3.
Oh, interesting. Mine's also with a P, but it's Patapon too, I think.
Oh, that's a good answer. I forgot about Patapon, but I didn't play it there. I played it on the Vita, even though it's a PSP game.
I believe I might have played it on Vita, but I bought my first PSP like 2 months after my Vita. And I bought the PSP Go. And I remember playing it on there, but I don't remember. PS3. What was the major innovation there? I'll kick off with one, actually. I'll say, I think for PS3, PlayStation Network is probably the thing. Simply the fact that you could just, not just patch games, but like that was definitely that era. But for me, that was why I bought a PS3. It was because we were able to get weird small games. Like I was drawn to PS3 for Flower and Fat Princess, and that type of stuff more than I was anything else. What else are you thinking? 6-axis?
No. No. The XMB, the cross media bar.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's technically PSP, but yeah,
it's fair.
You're 100% right though. Both of those having that, I still miss that. I wish that we could just have that as a theme or an option on modern consoles, but
I think this was the first Blu-ray player in my house too. Typically, we would have gotten the thing, one thing ahead of it. Then, like this would have been my personal thing. But I think I had the first Blu-ray player. I think I ended
up getting one before this, but it was definitely like I remember trying to justify buying a PS3 to myself and subtracting the cost of a Blu-ray player from it to just like. And I still didn't get there. Like in the early days of PS3, I was like, I'll have the Wii and that'll be it.
No, I definitely get a Slim. I'm not there day one.
Yeah. Top selling game PS3.
Grand Theft Auto 5, which is bizarre, probably to fucking say.
Yeah, it's not though, because it's correct. Followed by Gran Turismo 5, The Last of Us, Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception, and Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. What are your favorite titles from the PS3?
That's where I play a shit ton of hockey, like at EA, NHL.
Yeah.
That's all in this from like 10 on. It's around the time I play a lot of those. What else? Like your Call of Duties. I wasn't there for Modern Warfare, but I was there for Modern Warfare 2. A bunch of stuff like that. Dirtbag City. Trying to think. It's weird because it's that weird generation where like disposable income is starting to come. The generation's just so long, right? Like I have it at the beginning or towards the end of high school. It's with me through college, and then with me through my first job where, like disposable. I finally can buy The Last of Us. Like it's weird to think how that works. And so I don't know. There's a lot of like Uncharted. It's my favorite, one of my favorite series, I think, on PlayStation's brand. Yeah. I don't know, but I remember like Journey. Journey's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. It's where I play Hotline Miami for the first time. And that's the other thing too. Like you start, if you have PlayStation Plus, you get the free games, and
oh man, yeah,
you try stuff, and it clicks, and that's how I kind of got. I think that's how I fell in love with Hotline Miami. It was that or Super Discount, one of the two. So there's a lot. Most of my hours are probably with like a Madden or NHL when you go back and look at it, but the end of the life cycle, I start to really explore different things.
Because I think it was like by the end of the life cycle, it was almost a necessity. Like you're on PlayStation Network, like it was part of the ritual to like constantly check in with that stuff. I know for both of us, like that was by the end of that life cycle, that was IGN's podcast Beyond had the like the reins over that, right? And like there was, when you kind of bought into that and you were listening to that, it was like you couldn't not be excited to have a PS3.
Except those on the tester. What's your favorite PlayStation exclusive? Or favorite first party studio game?
Oh, right. At that point, yeah. That poor guy. I mentioned like, I was drawn in by like hearing about weird games like Flower and Fat Princess, but playing Infamous for the first time, like that game ruled it. I'm like still waiting on a new Infamous or a collection. Like I would buy that up, man. So much. But yeah, like you, PS3, I think, is the largest physical collection I have of games. Because I have so much. And weirdly enough, too, it's like the collection of games that I think I own the most of and have completed the most of, too. Like, I think there's one game in my library that I've not completed. That's probably wrong. But physical library, like, I think I've played through all of that stuff except for Fallout New Vegas, and I only have Fallout New Vegas because it was on sale, like clearance for $9, and I was like, well, I can't not buy this. And then I ended up never actually playing it on PS3, but I should. I loved PS3. That was such a like magical, fun thing. Little Big Planet was another favorite of mine, I think, until revisiting it this year. I kind of left it on a sour note, but yeah, really good. Just being able to like play PS1 games again on a modern thing was really awesome. And such a downfall when they weren't there on PS4, but we'll get to that point. Let's talk Vita. What would you call the major innovation of the Vita?
It lives.
Yeah, it does.
3G with the AT&T plan.
I had it, but I also nope. I did like Nier a lot.
So the dual analog sticks. They're not the greatest, but the dual analog sticks was a huge upgrade from the PSP for like third person type games. Yes,
I agree. That was one too where like our story from Sandeep about the being in a store. I remember the Vita I'd pre-ordered. I was so stoked. I don't think I've ever been more excited for a console than I was the Vita. And I remember I didn't want to hold one until I had my own. But when they announced that demo units were out there, a friend of mine and I went and checked them out, and he played it, and I let him describe it to me like some weird kink. And that was a bizarre moment. But yeah, the dual analog, man, having that, being able to just sort of, man, Vita, we could go down, we could do a whole Vita, we should do a whole Vita episode. But yeah, the dual analog, the backwards compatibility with PSP and PS1 stuff, like just having that all right there. It sucks that it wasn't like total compatibility. Like you had to do some of the weird side loading stuff with PS1 games. It was weird, but yeah, that ruled, having all that right there. How about this? This is gonna be a weird list for top sellers. But what do you got for this?
I'm gonna go and say something like Spelunky.
Oh, I wish. They were a little bit more AAA than Spelunky.
Oh, is Tearaway on there then?
No.
Wow. So I guess Little Big Planet. What number? I can't remember the number on Vita.
They just
3?
called it Little Big Planet PSV.
Oh, Vita. Right.
Yeah. So that is number 4. Number 1 was Uncharted Golden Abyss. Number 2 was Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. Number 3 was Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified. 4 was Little Big
yikes.
Planet. And 5 was Persona 4 The Golden.
I should have died. Damn it.
I know, but like you don't think obviously Vita was the thing that made everybody realize they like Persona, but you don't think that it would be that big. But yeah, I guess.
Yeah, but you have to think that it was a hardcore audience that had the Vita, and the hardcore audience was listening to Beyond like everyone was, and Beyond Greg Miller beating the fucking hammer on Persona 4 Golden.
Yeah, that's right. You're not wrong. What about you? What was your favorite Vita stuff?
So, like, Vita exclusive, I actually can't think of, like, a favorite that I have, but this is where, again, with this backwards compatibility, I was, like, playing a bunch of... It was, like, my, like, emulator. I was playing a bunch of PSP stuff. This is where I start Patapon. I never really beat a Patapon, but this is where I find my enjoyment of it. This is where I play through, like, Resident Evil 2 OG. Like...
Oh, yeah.
Why not?
Yes.
I played through a lot of that there. Yeah, just play weird PS1... Or PSP stuff, the occasional Vita stuff. I can't remember. Like I know I played a lot of Rogue Legacy just because of how good the cross save play was.
Yeah.
Without the words transferring.
You know, that was one that we didn't talk about with innovation, which I kind of made a soft note to myself to talk about this with PS4, but cross-buy and cross-play stuff and cross-save was really huge for Vita. Being able to just sort of have something and go... I'd bounce a lot between Vita and PS3 and then later PS4, but that was huge.
I was saving it for PS4, but since we're kind of starting the bridge there, I was going to say remote play.
Yeah, that too, right? Like, I did remote play from my PS3. Well, I guess that was more on PSP, wasn't it? Did they do PS3 remote play on Vita? They did.
I think so.
I know the app got updated at some point, and they were more just pushing it forward. But yeah, Vita Remote Play was something. I mean, that's how I played Final Fantasy XIV the first time through. I played a bunch of Doom 2016.
I forgot you played 14.
Yeah, dude. I
What
played
a fucking
14
nightmare that was.
But yeah, I played Doom with the Vita, which was an experience. Remote play was solid back then too. Like I today I don't have great luck with it. It's like it's fine, but it's always. But I don't know. Back then I feel like Vita it just worked.
I explored like a third of Fallout 4's map on remote play.
Oh yeah, that's a good game for that. Yeah, it's cool. The only other you mentioned Tearaway. I can't think of other big ones that we didn't hit. I played Little Big Planet PS Vita was my favorite game for sure. Like that just ruled on there.
What was that? Like it was like a Monster Hunter clone, but it kind of had that. It was first party. I can't remember the name of it.
You had the book with the eye on it. I just played it like earlier this year. Soul Sacrifice. There's that one, and then there's Freedom Wars. That was the other one.
Freedom Wars. I think Freedom Wars was the one I was thinking about, but I forgot about Soul Sacrifice as well. Yeah.
I think I bought both of those this year. I played a lot of Vita earlier in the year when we were playing Gravity Rush, which I still love Gravity Rush. I know going back to it didn't hold up as well as we thought, but still like that one. But yeah, playing that, I played a lot of Vita in the first half of this year. All right, PS4. We talked a little bit about that. Any other like major innovations you can think of with PS4 or big changes?
The controller finally did the correct thing and concave in the L2 and R2.
Yeah, the triggers were huge change. The share button too, which
oh right, yeah, I just take that for granted now.
Exactly right, and they were the first ones to do it. Like, what was I playing recently?
And dude, they that started Twitch integration and all that weird stuff.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
It's wild that PlayStation still has all that built in, and Xbox is it? How do you think they have it? Because it all was Mixer, and then that died.
I think you can stream to Twitch directly from it now, but it's It's not as straightforward as Yeah, I was playing something that I'll redact, but for season 13. And it's not, I mean, it's older, but still, like, there was something that popped up and I was like, oh, let me screenshot. Oh, I can't screen. I had to take out my cell phone and take a picture of the TV like a caveman. You know, but yeah, the share button, and the controller redesign. Like, it was the first time PlayStation was like, yeah, it's time to change what this thing feels like. DualShock 4 was a cool addition. I hate the touchpad so much. I wish that thing would go away. I really wish they would stop putting that on controllers.
It's a good map button.
I don't need a map button. Make it triangle or square. Make it go back to what the dude said. Give me the back touch. Give me that.
Rest mode.
Yeah, dude. Oh my gosh.
I know it's not there at launch. It's not there at launch, but
still. You know what, though? I hate putting it in rest mode now. Because if, like, the lights flicker or something, like, it just yells at me and hates me and... what do you got for top sellers on PS4?
It's Grand Theft Auto 5 is an acceptable answer.
Grand Theft Auto 5 is still an acceptable answer.
Hell
and it
yeah.
would be the number 2 answer.
Ooh, what's number 1? I'm not going to take up all your time. Thinking here.
Marvel's Spider-Man is the top-selling PS4 title.
I would not have guessed that. I'm glad I didn't guess it.
Grand Theft Auto 5. Yeah.
I would say like God of War, Last of Us Part 2, I think.
God of War is number 3. Uncharted 4 is number 4.
Oh, forgot Uncharted 4 is. Yeah.
And Gran Turismo Sport is number 5. You can't have a console without a Gran Turismo and a Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, that one's not that good.
Yeah, I know. PS4, you have any favorite titles that come to mind?
That damn Uncharted 4 is pretty good.
Yeah.
Played Doom here initially.
Doom. Tetris Effect.
Yeah.
Basically, like every game of the year that we had over the last.
Oh, remakes? Oh, god damn, we come full circle already.
Yeah. All of that. There's a ton. PS4, yeah. Again, this is the part where we're now... Disposable income is, you know, a full reality. So just kind of play and love everything. Next one in between the two major generations, we did slip in some PSVR. Obviously the major innovation here, virtual reality, but this one was a little weird because it was just sort of like kind of using some old tech with the old Move controllers, repurposing things. It never really kind of like became more than it was. Some cool things. I don't have a list of top selling games for this. And you and I have very little exposure to PSVR 1. So we'll move on to PS5. What would you say the major innovation of PS5 is?
I like that DualSense a lot. After that, though, I don't know what would be the...
Well, the answer we're looking for is obviously game cards. Those changed the industry.
I would say 4K.
4K, but also I think the SSD integration and the way that Sony did the load time stuff, that's been the one for me for both consoles. Where
that's a way better answer than what I said.
You don't think about it until you go backwards, and like there was something I was playing on PS3 that was just like, I forget what it was. I bought a PS3 game and put it in, just like waiting on that disc to like load the next. It's like, oh man, yeah, we really have it good now. With just how quickly things go, it's wild. But yeah, I agree. The DualSense is very comfortable. That is a solid controller.
So I know the Joy-Cons have a lot of the good vibration stuff as well, but when I like did fire paper on my sword and Demon Souls for the first time, and I kind of like felt that low rumble of the flame with a little bit of the sound, I was like, oh yeah, this is actually really cool. And then the dumb tension things on the R2 and L2.
Yeah, I love that. Astrobot really does that stuff well. Yeah, I agree. The other big one I think that stands out about PS5 so far is the integration of everything into the dashboard so that you can just kind of flow right into the store rather than wait for it to load and it slows down. That has been a lot cleaner. This is weird because we're not through the PS5 generation yet, but what would you guess the top selling games are?
Am I allowed to say Grand Theft Auto 5 again?
You technically are allowed to guess it, but surprisingly, it is not on the list that I found.
Top selling PS5. My gut is going to say Ragnarok.
It'd be a good guess, considering what else is on this list. What I forget where I found this, but I believed when I wrote it down it to be legitimate. This could be incorrect, but I've got Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Elden Ring, Final Fantasy 16, and Astrobot.
Yeah. I had a feeling that Gran Turismo wasn't going to be on there.
You'd think that it would be, but I don't know, maybe when it's all said and done. How about favorite titles for PS5 so far?
So far, Elden Ring for sure one. I think we're going to talk about more here, but Rebirth is that's a package. We'll just say that for now.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is dumb, but like, my whole Final Fantasy. I feel like the PlayStation 5 has been a Final Fantasy machine for me, besides Theater Rhythm. But like, this is where I play through all of A Realm Reborn, and what I've played through of the expansion so far. Final Fantasy 14. I love Final Fantasy 16. I feel like it's probably not going to go down as like the best Final Fantasy ever, but it feels like such a breath of fresh air compared to what the other mainline games have done, kind of going backwards. Yeah, so a lot of Final Fantasy stuff there.
When I tricked you into playing 15, did you play it here? Or did you buy it on PC?
I played it on Xbox, technically, because it was like it was a super sale.
Yeah, okay.
I would have probably played it on PlayStation, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's exciting that Square's still making good Final Fantasy stuff to play, right? Like that it was such a huge part of the PS1 5 generations later. Yeah, I think I did like Gran Turismo 7 a whole bunch, what I played of it. I liked Marvel Spider-Man 2 a ton. Miles Morales was incredible. Astrobot is a recent hit that's been really strong. Yeah, for sure. And then there's the latest generation of PlayStation hardware, the VR2, which really transformed VR for PlayStation. The eye tracking is in there. I forget what they call them. The Sense controller, the Sense VR controllers. Like, it's a solid platform that has zero first party support, and it's a bummer. But hey, next week, I think, or a little bit more than that from when you're hearing this, the Alien game is coming to VR2. So I've got something to look forward to. I'm excited for it. Of the 3 decades of consoles and handhelds and headsets, which do you think has made the most significant impact on video games?
It's got to be 3, right? It just sets up the online stuff, and you can see like the way that it starts the online with it. Just like, I wasn't there for this part, but like the PlayStation Store is just literally just a web page on the built-in browser or whatever, and how it transformed to like. I know that store ends kind of shitty, but you can see the DNA for what this PlayStation Store on 4 ends up being, and how the integration starts. So, like you mentioned for 5, how it just kind of all flows naturally. But yeah, getting that network architecture down, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And then just setting that up for what ends up being like necessary today.
Yeah, I think that one, and then like leading into 4, I know that like Phil Spencer's favorite quote in the last year has been that they lost the wrong generation or something like that in regards to the PS4 generation. Just that like PS4 really did take off and grab hold of people in a way that Sony hadn't seen since PS2, which I would always think the PS2 was the most significant, but as well, just for that, like how ubiquitous it became. But I think really PS1 for me is the one, just because it did change everything. It let a company like Microsoft enter the space, a little more than half a decade later, because it showed that you don't need to already be inside to do it, right? Like you can come in and.
I mean, whatever. I know Sega shoots themselves in the foot enough during this time, but like, I think PlayStation started digging the hole that Sega ends up falling into. And
like Nintendo didn't do so hot with N64 nor GameCube, right? Because I think PlayStation entered the market and really started to take hold. And PS1 just had so many weird games. Like we didn't talk about Parappa at all, but I remember playing Parappa. And like the fact that sure today, like you can open up Steam on anything and just find the most bizarre eclectic collection of games. But back then when discoverability was so limited and like what was available to you was so limited, like I've got a space shooter, a skateboarding video game, a game where a dude is strapped to tires and I'm shooting the Eiffel Tower, crime simulation game, like all of that. And then like, I haven't even hit on weird stuff like Jumping Flash or Vib Ribbon or any of the JRPG stuff. Like we wouldn't have like a JRPG obsessed nation if it weren't for PS1 and Final Fantasy VII and all of that stuff. Like you got no Kojima, you don't have Norman Reedus in video games without the PS1. Which of these consoles is your favorite?
Ugh. I like a ball. It's a tie. Is that I like the back catalog? Like going back, like PS1 has, oh my god, so many bangers. Like I wouldn't play. I don't come back to Parasite Eve, which is one of my favorite horror games now, without like that's on PlayStation 1. All that weird stuff's on PlayStation 1, and then I don't know, PlayStation 2. They all have their games. They all have their series of games. I would say PlayStation 5 is the weakest just because of the game catalog, but that's just the nature of it still being somewhat new.
Kind of. I feel like we've lost less and less. I think as games have gotten more expensive too, it's just been harder to put out a ton of first party stuff. Like that list is shrinking and there's just a lot of risk aversion in video games. And yeah, I think we're seeing less. I don't know. We're seeing more of just the same things, like.
But even that doesn't work now. What's the fucking game that just failed? That was supposed to be the
Concord. Well,
team. Yeah, Concord. Well, I mean, but like that was supposed to be the cookie cutter team objective Overwatch, and it. I think that's going to be a science experiment to watch. To see how many teams pivot off of what they think they had. That was a sign of hope for me.
Yeah. Like, we can go somewhere. Because I've been generally pretty bored with a lot of the Sony first party stuff. This generation and last. So, we'll see.
I still think there's a part of me that ends up playing Ragnarok one day or Forbidden West one day, but it's not there.
No. Let's look a little bit at the future while we're here. What do you expect from PlayStation 6?
I don't know. I don't even know what I want.
I guess, yeah, that's the other question. Just faster. You know what I want?
Like 8K, bigger hard drive.
Yeah, all that stuff I'm fine with. What I truly want is the ability to pick up a disc and put it in the thing and have it work, regardless of what. Like that's still my dream. Is like,
Oh, no day one patch?
oh no, not that. I'm fine with that. I'm saying like we've talked a bunch this last hour about the PS1 and 2 and 3 and 4 games that we've collected. I've made it all work under the TV here, thanks to the fine folks at Retro Tink and whatnot, right? Like, it's all good, but I don't want to have to keep a PS2 and a PS3 all I just wish that stuff, I could just have a PS6 under the thing, and it outputs in 8K, and it does everything, like, I don't know.
That's a pipe dream.
I mean, yeah, even the fact that, like, I bought Twisted Metal 2 on PS. It was like one of the first PS3 games I bought. If you go back and look at my like purchase history, I think it's Symphony of the Night and then Twisted Metal 2 are the first two things I bought on PSN. But I can't have either of those on PS5 because one, they haven't put out the PS1 version of Symphony of the Night on PS5, and two, the Twisted Metal 2 version they ported. Whatever they did with it on PS5 doesn't talk to the version that I already paid for, so I have to buy it again. Just bizarre. What about the brand? Where do you think PlayStation will be in 5-10 years?
I don't know. I think they're just going to coast again. I think you're going to see a PlayStation 6 that has this weird PlayStation 3 arc where they reveal it's like $849. You're like, what the fuck are they doing? And then Xbox, whatever they end up doing, or someone undercuts them successfully again and puts Sony on the back foot. I see that trajectory happening again.
What about a handheld? Do you think that PlayStation 6 will bring one? I know that's been the rumor the last few weeks that's been coming to fruition, but
I'd be shocked, but like I think the Portal, I don't know. Maybe that's a prototype thing. It ends up being a prototype thing for their new thing, but I don't know. They're going to try to compete in this tablet market that, I don't know. I just don't think they're going to belong in it.
Would you buy one?
Potentially. I've seen what's happened with the VR too.
Yeah. Well, if this thing is just a PS5 or a PS6 handheld version, then I think you got a better shot because at least you'll know there's game support regardless. But if this was a native like separate thing, separate games need to be made, I don't think it would survive at all. And yeah, to your point, like VR2 is just dead. Yeah. I hope there's a handheld. I hope there's a handheld everything.
But what's the point of the handheld if you have the Portal? What, they would do a Steam Deck thing?
I think the difference would be you don't stream to it. That you can just download and install games, and then there you go. Yeah, I think it is like...
So then you have a Series S, Series X situation, and ask developers who make Series S games how fun that's been for them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, they could do it. They can do all they want. I'm not the decision maker, but I think all this starts putting Sony on the back foot again. I just don't know who swoops in because I don't think it's Xbox. I think they're trying to. You have, PlayStation walking this vertical line. You have Nintendo that does this 45-degree angle off of that just goes in a totally different direction and has carved out its niche audience at this point. I think Xbox is trying to line itself up at that 22-degree angle, somewhere in between, but it's not going to work. So they're going to need a major pivot or something.
Well, it seems like the major pivot is that the PlayStation 6 is an Xbox. So
yeah, Halo Infinite, Infinity 360 is one.
But that, we'll see. 2 more questions to close us out. Do you have a dream video game announcement that only PlayStation can bring to life?
Bloodborne 2.
That's the one, huh?
I don't know what else I would take at this point.
No, that's fair. I don't even know that I have a single one that only PlayStation can bring to life. Because most of the stuff I like that they did, they've killed all those studios. I don't know. I really still want a new Wipeout game. I think that would be great. A Wipeout VR2 game would be very, very...
I'm trying to think what IP they're sitting on.
A bunch, man. I mean, they got a ton. I would also like to see them go back to some of the weird stuff they haven't touched in a while, like Wild Arms or... I forget some of those other like PS1, PS2 JRPGs and stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel that way with all these major companies that have all this history. Like, I would love to see them just take bids from smaller studios and just say, yeah, we'll hear you. Give us your pitch. Okay, go for it. You know, honestly, what Sega's doing right now with a lot of its old stuff, like they're letting internal teams make pitches for things that are...
Yeah, but I wonder how much, like... I don't know. I wonder how much the funding situation has soured that. What's the No Man's Sky? You know,
no, for sure.
Sony like pointed that like that was such a disaster that we're not going to do that. Yeah, like that game has salvaged itself, but without the Sony backing at that point.
No, it's a cross. It's not a problem unique to Sony either. It's a thing that's tough.
How about the Have Fun Shenmue 3 revival? How well did that go for Sony?
Exactly. But yeah, the only other dream video game announcement is that I can just have a box that I can play everything on. That would be.
I mean, yeah.
And if that happens, man, if that's a Vita 2, whoo, buddy. Last question: will you always buy a PlayStation?
Probably.
Yeah, I think probably too. I almost didn't buy a 5. I was going to skip 5, and then it happened. But I skipped it initially because it just wasn't enough there. And I'm happy I have one now, but it is underutilized now as I just wait for the next big first-party thing. I am playing the VR2 soon, though. Promise you that.
There's that.
Final thoughts on PlayStation?
I really hope the last 2 years or 3 years here aren't the isn't the path they're on. But other than that, I think, you know, it's done so much for video games, that brand. It's killed a lot of shitty consoles. I'm like talking like the Jaguar and the CDI, like all that good shit. Like killed all those. And then I don't know. They have awesome IP. I think their studios are awesome. Like what are left. I just hope more originality comes out of it. Really, I hope we start to see some more of the weird. And Concord is the thing that's like, oh shit, we just can't do cookie cutter shit. We have to actually innovate if we're doing a new IP.
Yeah, because I think where I'm at, same as you. Like I'm bored with what they're doing now, right? Like the PS5 is a means to an end because I can't not have one, but I'm bored with what is there. So we'll see, but I still. As I said, I've got all my old stuff. I still play it all the time. I still play PS1 stuff regularly enough. I lead up to this and in the wake of this episode, like playing PS1 stuff on PSP and Vita, it still feels right. I don't know. I love me some PlayStation. I think that's the conclusion. We love us some PlayStation.
Oh, and thank you, Shu.
Yeah, man. Congratulations to Shuhei Yoshida for his retirement early next year. But that's another one that's kind of scary about the future of PlayStation.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? Yeah. No, yeah. Jack Tretton, too. How did we go a whole episode without saying Jack Tretton's name?
because we were trying to. I saw the time. We didn't have enough.
Fair enough.
It's
fair enough.
It's a legend that's been talked about enough.
You're
I think
right.
Just saying the words is enough.
We'll close on thank you, Jack Trenton, for inventing PlayStation. Until next week. Next week, come back and hang out with us. We're not talking PlayStation specifically, but we are talking PSP and Xbox. That's right. It's the thrilling conclusion to Matt and I bought some new video game consoles this year, and we're going to talk about them. So come back for that one next week. Until then, thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener, for listening. Bye.